Well, the deadline is officially behind us, and the Tigers have some holes on their roster that need to be filled. We're going to talk about expectations from the team the rest of the way and just who we can expect to see on the Major League roster the rest of the season. All today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Thursday, August 1st, 2024. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Welcome in, everybody. Happy Thursday to all. So yesterday, we kind of broke the deadline down into three parts, really. We had the deadline eve, where we talked about what we can expect, what I want to see out of the deadline, etc. Then we had yesterday, which was obviously the deadline recap. We talked, if you're looking for like trade breakdown, the players we got rid of, all of the prospects we got back, a breakdown on a conversation surrounding Scott Harris and the job he's done, et cetera, et cetera. That is all in yesterday's episode, a little bit of a longer one. And then we have today, which is kind of as the dust settles and everybody calms down a little bit, the post-trade deadline outlook of this baseball team. The Tigers did lose 5-0, by the way, on Tuesday. We didn't even talk about that ball game. Don't think anyone wanted to hear about it. So we talked about the deadline instead. We're just going to move on and pretend like it didn't happen, even though there's probably going to be quite a few losses the rest of the way. And they had an off day on Wednesday, the Royals this weekend. So now that the deadline is again behind us, where does the team stand? I want to start off by putting a bow on some comments that Scott Harris made in his media availability that we didn't get around to talking about yesterday. One was that Tarik Skubal was reportedly never close to being traded. And that could be true. It could be a lot closer than maybe he's letting on. But regardless, publicly, he is saying that there was really never an offer that was even remotely close to them considering moving Tarik Skubal. That's not a surprise. We talked about that on here at length. Even though Heyman and Morosi were just absolutely wanted nothing more than for that to happen, I really think that was all smoke with no fire. Clearly, it was for this deadline. We get like 3 months off of not hearing about Skubal getting traded, and then it's just going to happen again once the offseason comes around. And in this winter, there's going to be talks about him getting traded yet again. And it's going to keep happening until the Tigers start winning games and can even muster a 500 record. I also thought it was interesting how Harris said the price or how Evan Petzold of the Freep said that Harris's price for Flaherty was reportedly pretty high, and he came down at the end toward, right at the buzzer there of the deadline. Yeah, like I don't know. That's in my head. That's kind of how negotiations work sometimes, right? Like you start high and then go down. Now, I do have my issues with the consistent of like we're going to be the team that waits until the last second strategy, because I think that's burned them 2 years in a row now. But I also think that part of that is just kind of naturally how negotiations work as well. I don't know. I wasn't as mad at that report as some people were. But I am very tired already, only 2 deadlines in, of being the last team standing and thinking that that's like the best way to approach the trade deadline. I think it's pretty clear that is not the best way to maximize value 2 deadlines in. I also think, and then we'll kind of move on to the main topic of the episode, but I also thought it was interesting how he had said that he didn't exactly say, but it was kind of insinuated by some people that he had an option of taking an offer that was rather similar to what the Astros gave up for Kikuchi. And the exact quote he used when challenged or asked about the difference between those two trade packages and the people that think that Kikuchi was, got better prospects for the Blue Jays than we got for Flaherty. And his exact quote was he rejected the premise and that was a better offer and that they really liked who they got. Now, he's not going to say, oh, yeah, some other organization got more for a worse pitcher. That it probably doesn't look very good. But clearly, there was at least something similar on the table from the Astros with the package they got rid of, and they chose this one instead. So only time will tell. We'll see how it pans out. But another kind of, kind of all out there move. We obviously talk about the Clark and Langford draft pick and whatnot. Another move like that where we're going to look back in a couple of years and really be able to judge more critically. He said that on Wednesday, him and AJ Hinch, Harris being, and AJ Hinch were going to meet for breakfast and decide how the roster was going to look the rest of the season, because now they are left with a bunch of holes on their roster. So that is what the bulk of this conversation is going to be about, right? Is like, what will this roster even look like? What does the rest of the season even look like? We're not going to bury the lead here. It's going to be bad. It is not going to be good. This is not going to be a good baseball team. I may have even undersold the drop-off that is probably going to occur. And part of that is because I was only thinking of the players that were walking out the door, and I wasn't also including the injuries that are presently happening, and the fact that they have one healthy starting pitcher that came into the season as a starting pitcher, two healthy starting pitchers in their rotation, including Kader Montero. So they are in between a rock and a hard place when it comes to the roster construction the rest of the way. But it's important not to just go and just throw out there a bunch of like who knows who's, and you just go out there and put up like a 100 loss pace on one of the worst teams in baseball. It's important for that not to happen. And I'll continue elaborating on that as we go here. I want to talk about the 40-man roster specifically, because that's naturally where you're going to look to go, okay, well, where is the help going to come from? I don't know where you're getting help on the 40-man roster. Position player-wise, non-major league, healthy 40-man roster players. Akil Baddoo, I guess you could just swap Madris or Valade for Akil Baddoo if you wanted to. Sure. Spencer Torkelson, we'll talk about him later. Eddie's Leonard, not getting called up. And that's it. Those are all of the position players on your 40-man that aren't in the majors and that are healthy. On the pitching side of things, you obviously need innings. Brennan White dealt with injury stuff, not getting called up. Ricky Vanasco, new addition, just traded for from the Dodgers. Could see him at some point. I don't think that's too far out of the realm of possibility. Mize is obviously now not coming back for another 30 days. Matt Manning, hurt, not exactly right around the corner, is going to need rehab starts as well. Easton Lucas, you just sent down. Don't think he's going to, be the savior to give you a ton of innings. Alex Lang out for the season. Sawyer Gibson-Long out for the season. Wilmer Flores had a brutal year, not a starter. Mason Englert, no. I mean, I guess you could, but that doesn't solve anything. That's your 40-man. Boom. There you go. So now we need to discuss where you're going to get innings from, because I don't think it's from the 40-man roster. And we'll do that right after this. Got to tell today about our new friends over at Liquid IV. Get hydrated with electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients from the #1 powdered hydration brand in America, Liquid IV. I like staying hydrated while traveling, going on, summer festivals, outdoor concerts, after a night out, etc. There are so many ways to take Liquid IVs with you. It's very easy, and it's very easy to drink as well. You just tear and pour. And next thing you know, you are incredibly hydrated. These things, seriously, I have had on my person well before I was the host of this show. My family loves Liquid IVs, and they are truly lifesavers. There's no more thirsty summers when you indulge in hydration with Liquid IV. Tear, pour, and live more. One stick and a 16-ounce bottle of water can hydrate you better than water alone. Powdered by LIV Hydroscience, an optimized ratio of electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients that turn ordinary water into extraordinary hydration. There's 3 times the electrolytes in leading sports drinks, 8 essential vitamins and nutrients, and always non-GMO, vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free, and soy-free. So get 20% off of your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code MLB at checkout. That's 20% off of your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code MLB at liquidiv.com. Also got to tell y'all about our friends over at Supply House. Supply House is the best in the business, and you get supplies from the site that is made for the skilled trades. Supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. If you need help with an order, get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trade can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free TradeMaster program. Every TradeMaster gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. So join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate you all for tuning in, as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We'll, of course, be back tomorrow recapping Game 1 here of this Royals series, as well as previewing the weekend. Also, be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today for free on YouTube. You can subscribe there or check it out for free in the Amazon Fire TV app, giving you all the latest and biggest news in sports from all of our great hosts here at Locked On. So, talking about the rest of the season, I don't think it's going to be very good. I think they're probably not going to be too great of a baseball team, but I don't want them to bottom out either and just be one of the worst teams in the league. Now, what I want doesn't matter. They might just not be talented enough, and they might do that. Only time will tell. We will see how it plays out. We talked about the 40-man roster and how I don't think there's actually a ton of help on the way. On top of that, they also, I believe, after the trade deadline, have 3 40-man roster spots open. So you could see players that aren't on the 40-man be added and then be called up to the majors. So pitching is the biggest question mark here. And the reason why is because, as we talked about earlier and as we talked about a lot lately, there are no innings in this in this rotation right now, rather, outside of Tarek Skubal. Kader Montero is not a guarantee to go past, 5 innings, 6 innings consistently. And those are your only 2 starting pitchers. The rest are all bullpen games. So what do you do? They asked Harris about it, and he said that they were going to provide help and reinforcements internally. So they're not going to go out. I know some people wanted to sign 44 or 45, however old he is now, Rich Hill. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it sounds like they're going to stick internally within the organization, which I have no problem with. I'd rather get a look at players that have a chance of being here beyond this season, which I don't think Rich Hill would. Love him to death, though. So on the roster currently, the Major League roster, Kenta Maeda is an easy candidate. You can just move him back. He's looked better in a bullpen role. I don't think that he's looked fantastic, but he's certainly been better than he did pre-getting demoted to the bullpen. So there's an argument there that you can just put him back in the rotation and cross your fingers and hope that he doesn't completely implode like he did in the first half of the season. Then you have Brian Sammons, who gave a little bit of a gritty dog performance earlier in the week, went 7 innings, did give up 5 runs, 2 home runs to J-Ram. He's going to have his hat thrown into that ring because of how he looked on whatever day that was, Sunday or Monday. And then you have the non-40-man roster players. A name that I've seen thrown around a little bit is Tai Madden. Tai Madden, I think, is still, if you look at pipeline, like a top 6 or 7 prospect in the Tigers organization. He has really struggled this year mightily. I want to say his ERA in AAA right now is like 9. It's high. And he's dealt with a lot of adjustments that he's trying to make, right? There's been a lot of questions about the effectiveness of his fastball. That's going to continue being a question mark. There's a question about the slider that's paired with the fastball and how effective is your slider if your fastball isn't that good. And pretty consistently, when he has a good outing, he finds his success because his fastball looked good that night. So we will see what happens with that. I think that would be a heck of a shock, to not in terms of a surprise, but just kind of like, I don't know. It would be a bold move. Again, dude's got a 9 ERA in AAA. I'm not sure that's necessarily the best possible outcome. But again, you need innings from somebody. Let's just throw some names out there and see what sticks. So Tai Madden's going to be a name that's thrown out there a little bit. Brant Herter, I think, is somebody that we absolutely could see. He's a lefty, big body, 6'5", 6'6", big dude. And has had a solid season. Also, ERA in AAA is weird. Now, 9 is like a 9 ERA is a 9 ERA. I'm not going to tell you that that's anything other than what it is. But like we saw, Reese Olson had a really high ERA in AAA and then got called up and was better. Miguel Diaz last year, same thing. Back with the organization, by the way. Maybe he'll get a call up, my boy. So you have a couple of things like that. But I think when it comes to Herter, like, I don't know, ERA in the mid 4s, like nothing crazy, not super, super high strikeout numbers, but is filling the strike zone a decent amount. I think that he's a guy that you might see added to the 40-man and you might see called up again, especially a lefty, something that this organization clearly is prioritizing, is left-handed players pitching and hitting alike. Matt Manning, I guess, eventually could, but as I said earlier, he's hurt as it stands right now and is going to need rehab outings before he can get called back up, and hasn't really been blowing the organization away down in AAA either. I think one of the more interesting ones to me is Lael Lockhart. Lockhart was traded from the Dodgers in the spring before the season started for cash. The Dodgers were just trying to get him off of their roster for, roster crunchness, something that the Dodgers have to do quite often because they have a really good and deep roster. And so far, I really have liked what I've seen. He's not a high velo guy, going to sit around 90 miles an hour. Also a lefty, has a really, really solid curveball. And this year has really shown that his splitter can be a legitimate swing and miss pitch. And that is why the velocity doesn't concern me too much. Now, similar to Kenta Maeda, if you're throwing 89 down the middle, it's not going to go well, right? Velocity is like the safety valve for poor command. Yes, you don't have to be pinpoint when you throw 100. You have to have better command when you throw 90. But I do think that that splitter, because a splitter is paired so well with a fastball of any velocity, that I've liked what I've seen out of him. And I think that he is somebody that I would like to see get an opportunity. I'm not saying he's going to be a part of the future. If this rotation was healthy, you would not hear his name come out of my mouth. I wouldn't be like, oh, we need Lael Lockhart up here no matter what. He's been, blowing me away down there. He's been fine. He's been solid enough at the AAA level. We have 2 starting pitchers. So this is the conversation that we're having. If I had to pick somebody, it would be him. I think he would be, well, if I had to pick anybody, it would be Jackson Jobe, but that the organization's not going to do that. I do think, however, that after they call up some players, Jobe could find himself in AAA here for the rest of the season, which would mean that he would be on the cusp going into next season, which would be really exciting. I do kind of expect that to happen, but I've said it a lot. I don't believe in wasting bullets when it comes to pitchers and their arms and whatnot. I would call them up now, but also post selling at the deadline. I can kind of see the legitimacy behind, like, okay, but you're going to waste bullets because this team's not going to be good. I get it. Send them to AAA. Sure. I'm not going to be upset about it. I understand the politics of it all, but in a perfect world, that would obviously be the direction I would head. So those are some candidates of who we could see. There's also about 15 more. I have no clue. Like, I'm serious. I have zero idea. You listening to this, keep your phone on sound on, because you could be getting a call to come be a starting pitcher for the Detroit Tigers the last 2 months of the season. I don't know. My mailman could get a call. Who knows? But those are some of the names that I think could have a chance of getting added to the 40-man and then being called up and given some starts and helping provide some innings, because you're not going to last 2 months of doing 3 bullpen games every time through the rotation. You're not. Let's talk about the offense. They have an opening there. They also have some players that I think probably aren't longed for the roster. So we'll talk about some offensive players that I want to see, or we could see the rest of the way as well. We'll do that right after this. Got to tell today about our friends over at GameTime. GameTime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the GameTime app actually go down the closer you get to first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and views from your seat. Their lowest price guarantee makes GameTime allows you then to take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. You just know what you're getting. You can check views of your seat before you buy, right? See what the view is going to be from the ticket you are buying. You also have the Game Time guarantee, where you get 110% of the difference if you find a seat in the same row and section for less somewhere else. Your purchases also cover the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. They have so many deals. Again, the price goes down the closer you get to first pitch. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in as always. So let's talk about the offense. We talked a lot about where the possibility of pitching innings are going to come from. Let's talk about this offense. So you ship away Mark Hanna, so that opens one roster spot immediately. But I also think that there are a lot of players on this roster that aren't pieces long-term going forward that I would have zero issue with demoting and or DFAing and giving someone else an opportunity the rest of the way. If you're not going to be competitive, you might as well get some players acclimated to the major league level. One of the biggest issues I had with how Scott Harris and this front office in general handled last season was the unwillingness to promote Colt Keith and Malloy earlier and promote them really, I guess I'll say, at all last season, right? Colt Keith struggled when he first got called up this year, mightily, and then turned it on and has been great. Malloy struggled mightily and now has been a lot better. Why don't we get those lumps out of the way now, have the offseason to then adjust, kind of hone in on those adjustments that were made in the last month or 2 months of the season, and then in theory, and this is a perfect world situation, progression is not this linear. I'm not saying it's this black and white and they're just guaranteed to then be amazing next year. But like in theory, you could get the lumps out of the way early, have them adjust now, and you can go into next season with them already having some major league experience under their belts. So that's something that I would like to see, and I would like the front office to be a little more open to than they were last season. A place to start in terms of position players that are going to get an opportunity the rest of the way is just Parker Meadows. Really easy place to start. He should, I don't care if he hits 100 again, he should be the center fielder every single day the rest of the season. I understand the lefty thing. I get it, but you have no outfield. Kerry Carpenter hurt, Mark Canha traded, Riley Green hurt. I don't need to earmark at bats for Bly Madris and Ryan Vilade. All the respect in the world to them. Don't need to earmark ABs for them. And none of those guys are really center fielders anyway. So unless you want to prioritize Matt Vierling over Parker Meadows, I think I want to see him out there every single day. I want to see if the adjustments he's made work. I want to see how he looks post adjustment and post injury. I want all of the Parker Meadows at bats that I can get. Okay. DFA candidates, Gio Urshela, Zach McKinstry. I would have already done it. I genuinely, I would have done it like an hour after the trade deadline. Okay. Gio Urshela doesn't have a trade market. Well, he's the roster spot he holds is more valuable than his play himself. He has like a 600 OPS. We have other dudes who can play first base. I have zero, and I genuinely mean zero reason in my head that would to keep Gio Urshela on this roster the last 2 months of the season. Zero. All the respect in the world. Hope he gets another job. Thank you for your service, and thank you for the production that you did provide, the little production that you did provide these, first 4 months of the season. More power to you. Great. Had no issue with the signing. It is what it is. Shake hands and go on your merry way. Zach McKinstry is one of the worst hitters in baseball. He can play multiple positions. I would rather call up pretty much anybody else who can play multiple positions and see if they can maybe hit better, because maybe they could be a part of this team going forward. I also don't need to see Bly Madris and Ryan Vilade at bats every day. If that ends up happening because you literally don't have bodies to fill those spots with, then fine. I'm more okay with giving them at bats than Gio Urshela and Zach McKinstry. But I don't need to see those either. Really, I'm okay if they move on from either of those guys at any point. So let's talk about who would fill all of these voids then that I just kind of laid out there. Already the one from Canha, and then any of those that happen in the coming days and weeks. Spencer Torkelson's obviously the big one that everybody's going to talk about immediately. Scott Harris said that he was still part of the future, was the quote there. He has been hitting better lately, to his credit. The OPS is back over 800 there. He's been doing a little bit better against velocity specifically as well lately. But also Harris's comments made it sound like he still has some work to go. I would probably call him back up. Again, I don't need Gio Urshela getting at bats. At this point, he's going to need to learn to adjust to major league hitting. He's been down in Toledo long enough. I would just give him at bats and just say, you know what, let's see if he can figure it out in the last 2 months of the season here. This is when he got hot last year as well. Let's see what happens. I'm not saying he's quote unquote fixed. I'm not saying it's going to be pretty. I'm not saying it's that he's going to be what we thought he was going to be, but that is what the last 2 months of the season is going to be about, seeing what we have for next year. And I kind of think you need to play him at the major league level to answer that question. Andrew Navado, call him up, call him up, call him up, call him up. I need it. I need it like air. I don't think it's going to happen. I think this organization is going to dig their heels in with him a little bit longer. But I love Andrew Navado. I don't even know if he's like a starter in the majors, ceiling going forward, but he's really kind of turned some heads a little bit down in the minors, can play a few different positions as well. Shortstop being one of them. I want to see Zach McKinstry and Gio Urshela leave, fill the void with some Andrew Navado. I would absolutely love it. This is a guy that, in terms of how they play the game, is not similar to Winfield Perez. Within like the withstanding within the organization. Right, like this time last year, we were like, oh, like Winfield Perez could get some opportunity. He's been having a really good season. And now Winfield Perez is doing what he's doing. I think that Navado could be a similar case. Now, he might flame out and he might get called up and not be able to adjust to major league pitching. And then right? That's how you learn about what certain players look like. And and whatnot. You got to pull the trigger eventually to learn what they are going to look like against major league pitching. So I would love it. I really would. And then Jace Young is obviously another name that's going to get brought up. I don't expect him to be called up before September. If he is called up this season, he will be like one of the September call-ups. I also think his defense has just been so brutal. And I know some people are like, we don't care. Like, just see if he can hit. I get it. He's a guy that I would really preach about, like, he might struggle early. His mechanics are unique, to put it nicely. They're interesting. They're very non-traditional, I'll say. And so I think that he's a guy that you really are going to have to let him take his lumps and adjust, because I think that he's probably going to have to face a lot of adjustments early. Now, I hope that he just comes up and rakes right away, but we haven't seen that really with any of our prospects in years. And I think just with how, with how his body moves and his swing and whatnot, that you're probably looking at a guy who's going to have to make some adjustments. And also, the defense at third base has been brutal. Colt Keith's defense at second has been brutal. Jace Young won a Gold Glove at second base last year. Maybe there's a path there where he would play a little bit more second. Colt Keith could move somewhere else in the diamond. Maybe try Colt Keith at first base. That's been something that's been talked about a lot. There's a lot of ways you can handle it. I don't expect Jace Young to get called up anytime soon. It's either September or it's not happening this year, similar to Colt Keith and Malloy from last season. Let's end on some expectations. I want to see you not become like the worst team in baseball. I don't want this to be, we're recapping losses every night. I want to see some fight. I want to see some heart here. Get healthy enough, because at the end of the day, your core players are all hurt, outside of maybe Colt Keith on the offensive side of the ball, and then obviously Scooble pitching. But I was really talking about the offense. But look, I shouldn't have. We should include pitching in there. Reese Olson hurt, Casey Mize, whatever. You have to prove that this core can be something. Because if it can't, if this core isn't, if you can't build around the core that's currently at the major league level, then like you probably should have considered trading Scooble more. Right? And like I didn't think it was the right move. I think you can build a winner with the core that's currently in place. But we talked about this yesterday, right? Like the fact that Harris has added nothing to the major league team since taking over is fine if you are in the depths of a rebuild. If you're the White Sox president of baseball operations, guess what? Nobody cares, right? You're in the depths, the deepest part of a rebuild. The Tigers in 2019, right? If you don't have an MLB core, that's fine. That is not what he took over. He took over a team that did have a core in place. And he has made comments before about not spending until the core is ready. Well, there was a perceived young core when he took the reins. Everyone knew it was going to be Torkelson and Green's team. And even if Torkelson is, if you think Torkelson's awful and never going to be a part of it, great. Throw him away. Green, Scooble, and again, Kerry Carpenter has played his way into that. Reese Olson has looked like he's going to be a part of this rotation going forward. You have a young core that is in place here. Colt Keith, again. And if they look like they aren't good enough to be a core that you can build around the rest of the way, and they're not going to get wins, okay? They're not going to be some really good team. I want to make that very clear. But if they don't at least inspire confidence, those players specifically, into this fan base and this organization, then we're going to be left asking in the winter, who is the core? And when will we ever add to the major league team? So it's very, very important to me to not just roll over and go, you know what, front office sold. We're just going to suck. Play the youth. See what you have in these guys. See if you have anybody else that is a Kerry Carpenter type situation who wasn't a part of anybody's radar for being a part of the core, and then hit his way onto that, right? By being a post-deadline call-up 2 years ago. See what you have in these guys and don't just roll over and die. This Royals series, you have Cater Montero is going to pitch game 1. Tarek Skubal is going to pitch game 2. And then who the heck knows is going to pitch game 3 and 4. Lorenzen is going to pitch for the Royals. It's going to be his first start for the Royals. He was traded there, and it's going to be against the Tigers. So kind of a full circle moment there. I think that's it. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will, of course, be back tomorrow recapping game 1 against the Royals series and then talking more about the weekend. Also, be sure to check out Locked On MLB and make that your second listen. Paul Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully, is here to provide daily national expertise with his trademark humor to help you get ready for the MLB playoffs and get through the post-deadline baseball season. Again, YouTube, Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great Thursday, everybody. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch y'all tomorrow. Go Tigers.